Welcome back to Asking for Knowledge. This is episode 3. I am your host, Jeff Mabe. If you want to know more about who we are, you can go back to episode 1 and 2. Go into a little bit of depth about where the idea for Asking for Knowledge originated and who I am and what my experiences were in baseball. The main purpose and focus of this podcast is to get to first principles on everything youth baseball. Again, more details on that in other episodes. But today we're talking about first principles and the idea of first principles. And it's really probably going to be a part 1 because I think there's so much depth here. As I started researching for this one, realized that there are a lot of gaps in my knowledge base and talking about this and in sharing this. And so I really want to kind of go down the rabbit trails of sports, of the history of sports, of human beings in sports. And I want to really dig deep. And this is one where, again, not all episodes will be this way, but I think it is very, very important for us to peel back all the layers. First principles means getting to the root, kind of getting to the very baseline. And understanding what is really happening. So, again, tearing off all the layers, all the filters, and getting down to the nuts and bolts of this thing. So, if this is your first time listening, this is our Asking Out Loud version of the podcast. So, Asking Out Loud is me, Jeff Mabe, just talking and talking and talking about different ideas, things that interest me. I'll ask questions. Most of these are going to be solo. Not my favorite format, by the way, but I feel it's necessary to share ideas and to challenge my thinking, and then in turn, hopefully challenging your thinking. And then my hope would be that we come to better ideas and better thinking through this process. So that's one version, Asking Out Loud. That's just me ranting and raving, talking about different things that interest me. And then we have Ask the Experts. So those are folks in the field of youth baseball, in the system, in the industry, if you will, from all different angles. Player development, tournaments and structure, mentality, coaches, not parents, that's the third version, but all of the different areas of the system, if you will, of youth baseball. And then the last version will be asking your parents. So interviewing parents, sending out surveys, and talking about the results of those surveys that we get back, polling parents, getting an understanding of what is really going on out there in the youth baseball world and maybe even the youth sports world. We'll see how far this goes and how far we can get and what information we can put together. So that is the general gist of the podcast types. But again, if this is your first time listening, our goal as an organization is to get to first principles on everything youth baseball. So that is our goal. And so I thought it would be good today, and maybe and most likely in following episodes, if we talked about first principles and really got clear on our definition of what those are. We'll spend a little time defining terms today so that everybody gets an understanding going forward of what that really means and what we mean when we say first principles. So our core focus as an organization is to help young players transfer the mentality. Let me back up for a second. I forgot a very important announcement. So first 2 episodes, if you notice, if you go on YouTube, you could even go on Spotify, different formats. There is a video version for those first 2 episodes. Moving forward for Asking Out Loud, there will not be a video version. So as I got into first principles, as I started thinking about this, the consumption of the majority of podcasts are audio only, and the time spent editing and filtering and all that good stuff, I feel like will be better used doing other stuff. So this will be raw audio, so I hope it's good. If it's not, it's okay. I'm okay with it, so you don't need to tell me unless for some reason I'm not audible and you can't understand my words, or there's just some type of background noise that keeps you from being able to enjoy the podcast, I already know. I know that there are going to be things that are not ideal, but I'm not here to sell you on a podcast. I hope you are entertained, but I'm here just to share information, to prompt your thought processes, to get you to think, and to force me to think, quite honestly, about these things and understand them and look at them in a different light. And hopefully, at the end of this, we have at least a better understanding of what's going on and where things need to be improved. So, starting out talking about first principles, I'll start with a quote. One of my favorite people in history, Professor Richard Feynman. If you have not had the pleasure and have never heard that name before, please look it up. Phenomenal book. I believe it is You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, something along those lines, but just Richard Feynman books. The man led a wonderfully interesting life. His quote, "The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool." I'm going to read that one more time. The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. In all honesty, when I turn a mic on, I feel like a fool. But my hope is, through the process of turning this mic on, I can articulate ideas, I can gain feedback, I can gain knowledge, and hopefully not embarrassing myself. And my hope is by you listening, you will go through the same process. So you'll challenge your thought processes, you'll look at things in a new light, and we will all be better for it at the end of the day. And specifically, our kids and our kids that play baseball, again, and or other sports potentially, depending on what our listenership likes. So that's where we're at. So looking at a ChatGPT definition of first principles thinking is a problem-solving approach that involves breaking down complex problems into their most basic fundamental truths and reasoning up from there rather than relying on assumptions or analogies. It encourages questioning everything to identify core principles and build new solutions or ideas from the ground up. I thought Elon Musk, and you can't let a day go by without referencing Elon Musk these days and what he's done and what he's doing. But I thought he gave a great example for this, and there's a link in the show notes to the quick YouTube video. I think it's 2.5 minutes, but he talks about how most of us reason by analogy. We take something that exists, in this case he's talking about a battery, but we take something that exists and we think only in terms of small changes and small iterations to what already is and already has been. And so what results from that is minor tweaks and minor changes, and rarely does that result in groundbreaking, earth-shattering type transformations. In the context of what we're talking about, this would mean the difference in what we see today in youth baseball and the current, and I'll just continually say system, y'all. I don't know what else to call it. Industry doesn't feel right. I don't know. It's not one organization. There's a lot. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. So I don't know. I don't know what it is there. I don't know how else to say it. We're going to call it system, but it would mean just making minor tweaks to the system. So maybe it's a pitch count for all tournaments. Everybody that has any type of organization, every pitcher has a pitch count. That would be, a minor change. Tournament format's still the same, still the potential to abuse pitchers. That would be, and again, that's one just random example, but that would be a minor change. A major change would be the entire thing as we know it today does not exist. Actually, let me back up for a second. A first principles look at it would be, okay, what is youth baseball? Where do we start? We start with the game itself. We start with the rules. Okay, we build up a little bit from there and say, okay, if we're going to have games and we're going to have rules, what then? And so that is the approach we're going to attempt to take in breaking this down and figuring out, okay, how do we get here? What were things like in the past? What does it project to be in the future? And if there are changes to be made, what would those changes look like? So why does this matter? Like, why am I even bothering to talk about this and spending the time doing this? The main reason to me is I don't talk to anybody, virtually anybody, who is thrilled when their child starts travel sports. And I'll say travel baseball specifically, but I don't run into people that are just like, yes, we made it. We're finally in this system, and we have been waiting for this. You know, little Kirby has been waiting for this, you know, since he was 4 years old to get on a travel team. I don't run into anybody that has that mentality or that mindset. Now, I do run into people that are excited that their kid made XYZ team. You know, I do run into people that are excited about the results of said team, and I'm going to use Kirby a lot. Kirby is a caricature of a kid, and I apologize if your name is Kirby or you know, are associated with anybody named Kirby. This was a kid made this recommendation. And actually, let me go on a side story for you. I think it'll be entertaining. So we're in the basement. We're working. Got a couple hitters there working on some things, and one kid just is having a tough day. You know, we sometimes that happens, and he's a little down on himself, and he's getting upset. And I said, we need to name this kid that comes out when these things happen. You know, it seems like you're kind of down on yourself. Your whole mentality changes. It's not the young fella that I know and that I'm familiar with that I call by a different name. So we need to name this kid. And without missing a beat, I didn't think the other kid was even paying attention. He was kind of doing some drills over on the other side of the basement. And he just shouts out, "Let's call him Kirby." And so that's where it originated. So if you're prone to be offended because your name's Kirby, or again, somebody you know is named Kirby, then that's how it started. So don't be mad at me. Be bad at one of my players. But anyway, I digress. So that's where we got Kirby. So Kirby is again the kid that none of us want to be. He is when we start getting a bad attitude, when we kind of want to give up on ourselves, we get frustrated, start making excuses, again, get upset with ourselves that we can't do anything right, get down on ourselves, that sort of thing. So I'm just going to use Kirby as a blanket name for anytime we're going to talk about a kid. That's the name. So back to where I started. Not met anybody. You know, Kirby cannot wait to, practice 2 nights a week, play 4 or 5 games a weekend. He's thrilled about this. Now, could Kirby be excited about playing baseball? Yeah, he probably is. But I don't meet anybody that just tells me that that's been little Kirby's goal since he understood what it was. So, that being the case, I think it warrants greater inspection and greater understanding. And the reason being is if we're going to participate in something or be part of something that requires tons of resources, of time, of money, takes us away from our families or spreads our families apart, should we not take a few minutes, at least a few minutes, right? We don't have to spend, hours and hours and days figuring this out. Should we not spend a few minutes and really get to the root of why we're doing what we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish and what the current system is accomplishing? I believe so. So from there, we can then understand if the system needs to change, then we understand it. We understand how it needs to change. We understand what changes need to be made, and we much better understand what the outcome needs to be. I hesitate to say should be, but what the outcome needs to be. Again, I don't want to start with a bias. I certainly have my own opinions about the system. You can probably read between the lines and guess what that is. But maybe the system is just fine like it is. Maybe it's the best it can possibly be given all the factors that are at play here. I'm not above, we go through this little process really take a deep dive and say, it's perfect. There are no gaps. I doubt that's going to be the case. Again, talk to a lot of parents, talk to a lot of people. It feels very much like a necessary evil, is the way that people look at it. So I'm just the type of person, I don't accept things at face value. I'm not going to accept that. Now, I'm not going to get cynical, I'm not, but I am going to be skeptical because there are a lot of moving forces with this thing, or moving parts, if you will, excuse me. So let's define some terms real quick. I did this briefly earlier, but when we talk about system, I'm just saying youth baseball in its totality, everything that is available to kids. So whether this be travel sports organizations like Perfect Game, Top Gun, USSSA, Ripken Baseball, or they recreation or community sports leagues. So Babe Ruth, Pony League, Little League, like your local community booster clubs that maybe compete by county or something like that, or by city. That's what we're talking about. And then lump into that training academies, lump into that development, businesses where your kid can go and improve either their overall athleticism or their specific skills as it relates to baseball. So when I talk about that system, I'm talking about all of it. Okay. So from there, we can break that down. And so when I say travel sports, I mean, and I already kind of gave the list, but Perfect Game, Top Gun, U-Trip, Ripken Baseball, that's what I mean when I say travel sports. When I say recreation or community sports, it is more of I will call them traditional, and I think most would agree with me. That is your recreation and community sports. So Babe Ruth, Pony, Little League, again, local boosters, that type of thing. It's probably going to vary from city to city, town to town, state to state, but by and large, there's a low barrier to entry, low fees, that sort of thing. Whereas with some of the other entities, it's, it can be an annual fee. This is where I need to, maybe in the future, asking the experts, probably have our head coach on for our little team and just get a better idea how these things work. But we typically kind of go tournament by tournament, and then we'll play through the different organizations. I'm sure some kind of stick to maybe whoever their favorite one is or something. I don't know. Again, we're at the front end of this, so we're gonna deep dive into all that. So when I say travel sports, that's what I mean. When I say rec sports or rec ball, that's what I mean, is the community sports. And then the player development ecosystem. So there's lots and lots and lots of different academies and different individuals that do lessons and things like that. So that's what I mean there. One big caveat here. So in preparing for this and in doing this research for the different organizations, there is a pretty defined line between for-profit entities, which typically all of the travel sports organizations fall under, and then there is the not-for-profit, which typically all the recreational or community sports teams fall under. I guess YMCA was another one that I failed to mention. They're not real big in baseball around here. Sorry, took a little break there to take a sip of water. As I said, I'm not going to spend time editing these, so it will be what it will be. There will be some gaps and some ands and ums and that sort of thing. I will do my best to get better as time goes on, so stick with us. But picking up, so for-profit versus not-for-profit, I hesitate with all of my being, not beating, that's something else. Let's not try to dive right into slogans or memes. And what I mean by slogans or memes is a lot of time really complex ideas get boiled down into slogans or memes and how they are depicted. And so it would be, something along the lines of, well, how those travel sports organizations, those are for profit, and so they're going to suck the life out of you. Well, that could be true. It could also not be true. So let's not take the intellectually lazy way out and just broad brush paint every organization and every group one way or the other because for profit, not for profit. Okay. And I'll just say that specifically about that because I don't want to just jump to conclusions in that area. I really, really, really want to dig into this. And my hope is I can find guests and I can find people that have participated enough to give us honest, clear, and transparent feedback as to what's really going on, which organizations benefit the players the most, which do give back. I feel like the results might be surprising. They may not, but at least we spent the time understanding. We didn't just jump to it and kind of get, again, intellectually lazy and just skip right over and say, yep, these entities are wringing out the towel, for the parents and sucking every last dollar out, even if it appears that way, right? Let's just hit the pause button and dig a little deeper and make sure that we understand exactly what's going on. Because the reality is, with any free market, nobody, and again, some might disagree when it comes to kids. This is, back to the proverbial kid begging for cereal in the cereal aisle at the grocery store. But nobody is holding a gun to our head and making us write checks. So let's be real. We choose at the end of the day. Again, maybe it is to solve the groans and cries of a young child and to try to make them happy. But at the end of the day, nobody's holding a gun to our heads. And if your kid is holding you hostage in that way, hopefully we'll have a conversation at some point in the future that helps you deal with that in a much more productive way. Again, I digress. So let's go back to thinking about why sports and games even exist. And I did not do as deep of research here as I should have, and we will. That's why this is part one. But once our basic needs are met, safety, security, food, that sort of thing, we still, as humans, have that desire for status. And games and competing in games and winning games gives us status. And I don't want to say it's as simple as that, but it kind of is. There's not a lot of depth and nuance. Now, that is not to say that we don't put all kinds of social, developmental, other layers on top of it, because we do. And that is not to say that things like teamwork, discipline, growth, physical exercise, dealing with adversity, the list goes on and on and on. That is not to say that those things don't come as byproducts of competing in sports and in playing in games. Certainly, absolutely, there are positive things that come out of it. I don't want to boil it down because some people, they'll hear this and say, well, are you kidding me? Like, there's so much more to it. And again, yes, but it's a byproduct of. It's kind of not. And again, most of us, we came up, our buddies played whatever, friends, baseball, basketball, football, soccer, fill in the blank with the sport. We played a little bit of it. We watched it on TV. We rooted for our team. And then when it was our turn, we signed up. Our parents signed us up. And we played. I mean, it wasn't much deeper than that. And again, some of you will probably turn the show off and say, well, why, that is the case. This dude is overthinking it. You're probably right. But these are the same parents that are complaining about writing checks and are gladly riding with the tide of travel sports and saying this is just how it is. So, I guess it can be both, but my question is, does it have to be? Back to competition. Competition is certainly not limited to sports. We compete for all kinds of things. The big three, and there's several different ways to say this and to define this, but the big three: health, wealth, relationships. Those are kind of the big three that we want in some form or fashion in our lives. And so we seek those out in different ways. And again, if we had health issues, meaning we didn't have adequate food, we didn't have adequate shelter, there would be very little games because our focus and our effort would be towards pursuing that goal and satisfying our needs in that way. But for most of us here in the United States, those things are taken care of. And so we need something to do with our time. Enter competition, because we got to kind of root out who's who, and sports and games. So health, wealth, relationships. Once we get past health, we got wealth and relationships. Wealth can be defined a lot of different ways. Relationships can be defined a lot of different ways. But power and status kind of fall under really both of those, because if we can prove that we are the best in any given thing, we can get status as a result of it that results in both wealth and relationships. But that's the root. That's where it starts. That's what drives us in this direction. And it's interesting to me to talk about, because the interpretation of why games are important, why sports exist, ranges widely from anywhere of what I would call, apologize ahead of time if this is derogatory, juice box teams, juice box parents, to maybe we'll call them pro parents. Didn't prepare this terminology ahead of time. Kind of just shooting from the hip here on these names. Maybe we'll call them pro parents. So definitions: juice box parents, these would be the folks. Games are for fun and for fun only. Nothing matters as long as you're having a good time. So that's one end of the spectrum. Everything's good. Everything's fine. Kirby smiling, good to go. Complete other end of the spectrum. Sports are a snapshot of what life is about. Compete, be the absolute best. Eliminate all competition. I think I've got that right from end to end on the spectrum. Maybe not, but I'm giving it my best shot there. So we've kind of got, we'll call them pro parents, and then we've got juice box, and then we've got every possible type in between. So there's a lot we could talk about there. So we are nearing, actually I think we're at 30 minutes. I don't know how time goes so quickly when we are having these conversations. But I think we're going to stop there. So there will be part 2 coming soon. Again, continuing the conversation on first principles, we're going to dig deeper into the origination of sports and games. And because I think that is interesting, that would be an interesting dive and an interesting topic, is to say, at what point in history did we get to that point where, and again, I don't want to go back to, this is not, I don't know, maybe it is, the Roman Colosseum version of sports and games, life or death. Maybe we get past that and figure out, okay, when did sports as we know them, games, when did they originate? And what did it look like? And what were those games? And, I think that'll give us a glimpse into the root of the human nature surrounding it. And then we'll go from there. We'll look at the evolution of it. We'll look at how it grew, how it expanded, how we got to the modern day, again, system that we see. And we'll just diagnose it. And then we will go literally every direction we possibly can once we have dug in on these first principles. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're entertained by it. As you can tell, this journey is it's gonna bob and weave. It's the only way I know how to be. If you are enjoying the show so far, please share it. Send it to a friend. Follow us or subscribe, depending on the channel with which you are listening to this right now. Just give us a quick follow and send it to a friend or family member who you think would enjoy it. And until next time, keep on asking for knowledge.